Thank you for having me. Okay. Thank you. That's great. Yes. I do like appreciation. I'm going to start with some definitions. I'd like to start with the North because it's slightly simpler than Posh. Not much. But for tonight's purposes, I'm going to define it as follows. This is anybody? Great Britain. Okay. That's Great Britain. It's not a test, honestly. And this wiggly red line, as well as demonstrating my amazing PowerPoint skills, thank you, is my working definition of the North of England. Okay. For what it's worth. Now, I call myself a Northerner. For the following reasons. Number one, I lived from the ages of 1 to 18 in a town in the northeast of England. I think we can call those formative years. I was state educated locally, and most of my teachers were not posh. I'll come to my definition of posh later, and that's complicated. For the sake of full disclosure, I have lived outside of the wiggly red area for most of the time from the age of 18. My brother queries why I even call myself a Northerner, but he was 3 when we arrived in the northeast, so what does he know? Now, I'd like to do a little bit of audience participation at this stage. Are you up for that? Yes. Okay, good. We're going to do some word association brainstorming. Okay. So for this, you will need to turn to a person or persons near to you, and you have 30 seconds. Does anybody have a second hand? I realise I don't have one. Yeah. Do you want to do that? 30 seconds. Okay, very good. You have 30 seconds together to brainstorm the word posh, okay? To tell each other the first things that come to mind, whether that be people, attitudes, ideas. 30 seconds starting now. Anybody want to give me something? Feedback time. Spice Girls. Spice Girls, okay, thank you. Anything else? Chips. Chips.
Yeah. You get chips and then you get posh chips.
Okay, posh chips. Great.
Anagram of shock.
Nice, thank you. Any more?
Port out, starboard home.
Oh, very good. Any more? Posh?
Accents.
Accents.
Private education.
Private education.
Rich.
Pardon?
Rich.
Rich. Okay, great. Okay, we're going to do some more brainstorming now. You have another 30 seconds. This time with the word. Hello. With the word Northern. 2 words. Northern. 30 seconds. Again, please, Tim. People, attitudes, ideas that come to mind when you hear the word Northern. Thank you! Right, any audience feedback? Northern?
My mother.
Beatles? What?
My mother.
Your mother? Okay.
Minors.
Minors, as in small people or as in people who do
Brown bread, blackberry, steep hills.
Steep hills, very good. Okay, I like that. Thank you. This was an entirely non-scientific brainstorm. Thank you for participating. I'd like to do a quick... Shut up! Thank you. I'd like to do a straw poll, equally non-scientific. Can you raise your hands, please, if you would define yourselves as posh? One at the back, very good. I'd like you to raise your hand if you've ever been called posh. Oh, would anybody here raise your hands if you would define yourselves as northern? Red wiggly line. Okay, interesting. Keep your hand up if you define yourself as posh northern. That's great. Has anybody else ever met a posh northern?
Yeah.
Oh, you have? Great. We need to talk. This is great. I suspect, and from my experience, like most people feel there's little crossover on the posh northern Venn diagram. But I'm here to tell you that there is at least me. and my new friend here. Great. I've been fascinated with accent, with class, with origins my whole life. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that.
Go and have a bath.
Seriously.
Ignore.
They
don't know any better.
Also fascinated with psychogeography, the whole interaction between people and place my whole life. And it may be because I consider myself part of an interesting and unexplored sociological phenomenon. Do you agree, sir? Very good. I'm going to try to tell you a little bit more about my strange tribe, or at least the Durham division. There are others. I've met some others, but theirs is not my story to tell. I'm going to begin with one story about the time this whole thing struck me very forcibly. I just met somebody at a party. We were chatting about where we come from. I said, I'm from Durham. Would you like to guess what this man said to me in response?
Which part of Ireland is that? That's what they always say to me.
Really? Okay. He said, no, you're not. Now, I don't know if you've ever divulged a piece of personal information to a total stranger, only to be told you're lying. But I'm here to tell you that's a bit of a disconcerting experience. The man in question is from Scarborough, and very much sounds like he is. He also went to university in Newcastle, so he knows, for a cast iron fact, that everyone from the northeast sounds like Cheryl Cole. Or whatever she's called now. The more common reaction, which I think somebody mentioned, is you must have lost your accent. Now, when I have to break it to these people that I never really had one in the first place, their reactions tend to be somewhere on the following scale of disappointment to annoyance. In fact, weirdly, today I had this discussion with somebody, with a Scouser, and you should have seen the look on her face, this kind of baffled consternation that I could be from Durham and not sound like it. And I tried to remember that face as I was looking at it today, because I thought, if anybody's got that look, it's probably because of that reason, not because the talk's going really badly. Okay, anyway. And I do find that people from other parts of the country don't get this quite as much. And I was thinking of Cole. I'm going to pick on you, Cole. Cole grew up in Walthamstow.
Yeah.
Doesn't really... Do people ever say to you, you don't sound like Reggie Cray?
No, but then I changed my accent at the age of 15.
Okay.
Deliberately.
He was in his 17 though.
If you had my sister, you wouldn't think that we were related.
Interesting. Interesting. Maybe you can do a talk on that next time. Anyway, moving on to poshness, and I want to tell you another story. So you have to imagine me 10 years old, quite a lot shorter. I'd been given a Hornby train set for Christmas. Anybody relate? Yes. And I wanted to buy some of those plastic figurines that you can get that make your whole setup look a bit more authentic. I see some nodding. Good. So I went to a local toy shop with my friend Mark. We were the only customers in the shop, and there were two assistants. For the purposes of the story, I'm going to call them Brenda and Anne. We found some plastic figurines. They cost £1 for a bag of 3. Now, in the late 70s, that was a lot of money. And the phrase that my friend Mark chose to bellow out at that moment was, "That's absolutely exorbitant!" Did you not? And in a response worthy, I think, of Alan Bennett, Anne turned to her colleague and declared, Brenda, we've got some real posh lads in here." And I and he continued to be called Posh on a regular basis until we both left the Northeast. So from my experience, it seems to me that there are 2 necessary conditions for being posh in the Northeast at least. They are as follows. Number 1, not sounding like Sharon Cole, or whatever she's called now. And secondly, using git-lang words. You may be asking yourself now how it was possible for me to remain posh surrounded by an ocean of Geordies. Firstly, a word about Durham. Has anybody been to Durham?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. In 1859, it looked a bit like this. And I'll be honest with you, not a lot has changed. True, right? A few more buildings, but pretty much the same. Someone once described Durham to me as in the north, but not of the north. It's a pretty place, and I think maybe pretty and posh go together sometimes. Also, a word about my parents. They both grew up in the north, as defined by my wiggly red area. My mum was the only child of a Cheshire regional bank manager. My dad grew up in rural Leicestershire and was the first member of his family to go to university, where he was told he would never get on with an accent like that. Being an impressionable sort, he took elocution lessons, which never really took hold. And of course, not everyone sounds like their parents, but I pretty much do. In short, I think I'm the product of a confused linguistic home environment. At least we had sure A's, right? So there were a few things that were more likely to attract derision in the Northeast than calling the green stuff in the garden grass. The other thing about Durham, although it's a small place, it does attract a wide range of people from across the country and beyond, who come there to live and to work in academia, in business, in the church, middle class people. And being middle class myself, their children were the people I tended to hang out with. Not exclusively, but mainly. We could all do Geordie if we need it, and if there is time, I'll do share some of my particular favourite Geordieisms later. But our language was a strange hybrid, and the Geordies called us Posh. And then, of course, I moved out of the red squiggly area to the south, and most people here, who hear me speak, tend to identify me as generically, non-specifically northern. Mainly on account of calling the green stuff in the garden grass.
Yours is astroturf.
Not my garden. The garden.
That's posh.
All right. So that's the social peculiarity in a nutshell. I'm seen as posh in the north and as generically northern in the south. It feels uncomfortable. I feel a vague envy towards people who have a strong accent which is unmistakably linked to their specific place of origin. And not having that gives me a feeling of what the writer James Wood, who went to an actually posh school next door to the house I grew up in, called homelessness. Homelessness. It's a nice word, isn't it? Homelessness. I've tried to work out what it is I feel I'm lacking by not sounding like Cheryl Cole. Obviously, it would avoid the need to go into long explanations every time the "where do you come from" conversation happens. There's also a perception of authenticity, I think, around certain regional accents, particularly Geordie. It's an accent that opens doors, some doors maybe, to light entertainment, I don't know. Maybe on a basic level I just want to fit in. I've made occasional attempts to do something about it, like my first week at university, where I was surrounded by extremely posh southerners, and I hammed up, I'm sorry to say, a full Geordie accent by way of reaction. I couldn't sustain it for more than about a week. Anyway, by way of light relief from all this introspection, and while you're thinking of questions that you might want to ask me later, or deciding how you're going to psychoanalyse me, I think have I got time for a quick quiz? Yeah, I'm going over time, really sorry. I'm going to give you a quiz on some of my favourite Geordieisms as follows. Hoyenclarts. So you've got to imagine we're coming back from the PE field, our teacher tells us off for Hoyenclarts. If you're doing that, are you 1, insulting one another? Are you 2, throwing mud? Or C, pretending you're trying out for Newcastle?
Very much.
Mud. No. Mud throwing. It is indeed throwing mud. Hoyenclarts. Number 2, you look out your window, and in the garden you see a spooky. Do you see A, a sparrow, 1, a sparrow, 2, a snail, or 3, a sparrow, spooky. Cat, you go down to the shops to buy a bit cat. Are you looking for horse trout? Sweets or cigarettes? Sweets. I think it's a very Durham thing. They don't even say that in Newcastle. Good cat. Finally, Mara. You greet somebody in the street. Oh, Mara. Are you looking at a friend, an enemy, no, or a potential sex partner?
All three.
That's a friend. Very good. Okay, I'm done. In conclusion, thanks for listening. And sorry for the